The rocky terrain stretched endlessly beneath the twin suns, casting long, jagged shadows across the crimson dust. Captain Elias Grant stepped carefully over a jagged stone, his boots crunching against the rough surface. The air was thin and slightly metallic, but breathable with their suit's filtration systems. He had landed on this remote planet as part of the Terran Exploration Corps, a mission designed to study planets rumored to harbor intelligent life. Beside him, the rest of his team moved cautiously. Drones hovered above, scanning the horizon for movement. The atmosphere was strange, filled with the scent of minerals and a faint hum that seemed to come from the rocks themselves. It was beautiful, but also silent in a way that made Ilias's nerves tense. "Keep your eyes open," he said quietly, his voice calm but firm. "We don't know what's out here." The team's scanners beeped softly, indicating unusual life signs ahead. A cluster of tree stall, thin, with glowing leaves, swayed without wind, their luminescence pulsing faintly. Elias stopped and signaled the team to halt. "Scans show life signs," he whispered, pointing toward the trees. "Stay alert, but keep it non-threatening." The team fanned out slowly, moving through the forest. Elias's heart beat steadily. He had faced unknown planets before, but something about this place felt different. There was intelligence here he could sense at Tevin if he hadn't yet seen the owner. Then he saw her. She stepped out from behind a tree, her movements smooth and precise, like a predator observing its prey. Her skin was a shimmering shade of blue, catching the sunlight in a way that made her look almost ethereal. Her large eyes, bright and alert, studied him without fear, and in her hands she held a weapon small but clearly powerful, aimed directly at his chest. Elias froze. The rest of the team instinctively raised their weapons, but he shook his head. "No need," his mind said. The human instincts of calm and calculation told him that aggression would make this situation worse. Instead, he raised his hands slowly, showing he meant no harm. "I come in peace," he said softly, his voice carrying a steady confidence. "I mean you no harm." The alien girl's finger tightened on the trigger, and her eyes narrowed. She didn't speak at first, just studied him. Elias noticed her ears twitched slightly, a sign she was alert, but cautious. He didn't move closer. He remained still, his posture open, relaxed, but confident. "Stay calm," he murmured to himself. "Humans can handle this." The girl tilted her head, clearly confused. She spoke in a strange melodic language, one that his translators couldn't immediately process. Still, her tone wasn't angry, it was questioning. Curious, Elias took a careful step forward, slowly, never breaking eye contact. "I don't have a weapon," he said. "I don't need one." The girl's finger faltered. For the first time, she seemed uncertain. Elias continued, "We can talk. We can understand each other without fighting. That is how humans solve problems. I will not hurt you." He could see her pulse quicken. Her weapon trembled slightly in her grip. He kept his hands raised, showing trust. His team looked tense, but Elias waved them down silently. They needed to let this unfold naturally. Then a soft rustling came from the trees behind her. A low growl followed. Both Elias and the girl's attention turned toward it. Out of the shadows, a creature emerged, long, sinewy, with multiple eyes that glowed in the dim light. It hissed and bared sharp metallic teeth. The girl instinctively raised her weapon again, but Elias didn't flinch. Instead, he assessed the creature quickly. It was fast, but it moved in predictable patterns. He noticed the way it was blind on one side, how its legs could be tripped with just a small obstacle. He smiled faintly. "Watch this," he whispered under his breath. He grabbed a small device from his belt, a compact gravity pulse emitter. Not a weapon in the traditional sense, it created a brief, localized shift in gravity that could move objects or temporarily block a creature's path. Elias activated it, sending a pulse toward the creature's feet. It stumbled, losing balance, and hissed angrily. The girl's eyes widened. He didn't shoot it. He didn't even touch it. Yet the creature was neutralized. She slowly lowered her weapon, unsure whether to trust him or attack again. Elias knelt slightly, showing that he had no intention to fight. "See, you don't need to attack to defend yourself," he said. His tone was patient, kind, yet full of quiet confidence. Humans use intelligence first. Force is the last option. She blinked, trying to process his words. Her glowing eyes reflected curiosity and hesitation. She was clearly impressed, even if she wouldn't admit it. "Why don't you have a weapon?" she finally asked, her voice melodic and hesitant, though he couldn't fully understand the words. He used a translator app, letting the text display in his visor. "I trust," he said simply, "and I believe there is always a better way than fighting." Her gaze lingered on him for a long moment. Then, as if deciding, she slowly lowered her weapon completely. Elias kept his posture relaxed, not pushing too quickly. "You are different," she said, the translator picking up her fragmented words. "Others, they would have fired by now." "And I'm human," Elias replied with a small smile. "We can be many things. Brave, curious, thoughtful. Not always fighters," she considered this. Then, a new sound drew their attention. The trees shook violently as more creatures approached, bigger, faster, and clearly hunting in packs. Elias didn't panic. He glanced at the girl and nodded toward him. "Stay close. Watch how we handle this." She hesitated, but then followed. The creatures lunged, and Elias quickly assessed their positions. He used the environment to his advantage: rocks, glowing plants, and uneven terrain. By creating simple obstacles, he slowed them down. Then he used small pulses of his gravity device, redirecting the creatures without harming them. The girl watched in awe. He was not using a weapon to kill. He was using his mind. She had never seen this before. Every action he took was precise, careful, and effective. The creatures eventually retreated, hissing and confused. Leaving Elias and the girl standing amidst the glowing forest, she looked at him, her eyes wide. How did you do that?" she asked. Elias smiled softly. "Humans think differently. We see patterns, solutions, and possibilities. Strength isn't always in a weapon, it's in your mind, your courage, your patience." The alien girl lowered her head slightly, clearly still processing. For the first time, she didn't see him as a threat. She saw him as remarkable. Elias extended his hand slowly, a gesture of friendship. "My name is Elias. What's yours?" The girl hesitated. Then, after a moment, she reached out and touched his hand lightly. "Lyra," she said. And in that simple handshake, a bridge was built between two very different worlds. The weapon was no longer necessary. Trust, curiosity, and intelligence had done what aggression never could. For a long moment, they simply looked at each other, understanding that this encounter could change everything. Lyra had expected a fight. Instead, she had met something new, a human who didn't need a weapon to command respect. And Elias knew that this meeting was only the beginning. The twin suns dipped lower on the horizon, painting the forest in shades of gold and red. Somewhere deep within the glowing trees, life watched and waited. But for now, the tension had passed. Peace, however brief, had been won with courage in mind rather than force. Lyra glanced at him, her expression thoughtful. "Perhaps I misjudged humans," Elias chuckled softly. "You're not the first," he said. "And I hope you're not the last to learn that we are more than our weapons." As night began to fall, they started to walk together, side by side. The forest was alive with soft glowing lights, and creatures that had once seemed menacing now observed them from a distance. Elias felt a surge of hope. Maybe this planet hand, this alien girl could become allies, not enemies. And in the quiet hum of the alien forest, under the light of two suns, the first step toward trust and understanding was taken. The forest seemed alive in a way that was both beautiful and unnerving. Glowing leaves hung from thin branches like lanterns, casting soft light across the crimson ground. Elias and Lyra walked slowly, their footsteps careful over the uneven terrain. Neither spoke much at first. Words weren't necessary yet. The moment itself was significant. Trust had been extended, but it was fragile. Elias kept a careful eye on the forest, scanning for movement. Lyra, meanwhile, observed him with quiet fascination. She had seen many creatures survive here, but none had acted like him. He didn't rely on weapons, yet he had handled the attack with ease. His mind worked differently, and she wanted to understand it. Finally, after several minutes, she broke the silence. Her voice was melodic, still unfamiliar to him, but the translator picked up the words, You did not fight. You did not need. Weapon. Why? Elias smiled gently. Sometimes strength is not about force, he said. It is about understanding, seeing what others do not see, and acting carefully. Humans try to solve problems with thought first, not just arms. Lyra tilted her head, puzzled. Thought. First? Always? Not always, Elias replied. But it often works better than fighting. I can handle myself. I can protect others without harming creatures that do not deserve it. That is how we try to live. She studied him closely, her glowing eyes reflecting a mix of skepticism and curiosity. You are strange. Others I have seen they kill first. Humans are not like that. Elias chuckled softly. Some are, he admitted, but many are not. We can choose. Intelligence and courage matter more than weapons. Sometimes thinking is stronger than anything metal or fire can do. Lyra's eyes narrowed slightly. Thinking. Stronger? Yes, Elias said simply. Watch and see. The forest shifted as a flock of small, luminescent creatures darted between the trees. Lyra tensed. These were harmless, but quick, and she was unsure how to react. Elias knelt and extended his hand toward one of the creatures. It hesitated, then landed gently on his palm. Lyra's jaw dropped. You are not afraid? She asked. Elias shook his head. Why should I be? Fear does not solve problems. Understanding does. The alien girl slowly lowered her arms, her weapon no longer in her hands. She began to follow him more closely, though still wary. As they walked deeper into the forest, Elias asked questions, speaking slowly and clearly. What is your home like? He asked. Your people. Lyra's gaze softened. My village is near the mountains, she said. We live high, away from predators. We train to survive. Many humans. I do not trust, Elias nodded. That is understandable. Many beings fear what they do not know. I want to learn, not harm. Her eyes studied him carefully. You want to learn? Yes, he said. I want to understand your world, your people, your life. Lyra considered this for a long moment. Then she glanced away, uncertain if she should respond. Finally, she said quietly, No human has ever asked to understand. They always destroy first. Elias's expression became thoughtful. Maybe they did not know there is another way, he said. Maybe they never saw the chance to use their minds first. The forest grew darker as twin suns dipped lower, painting the sky in soft purples and oranges. The soft glow from the leaves lit their path, but it also revealed shapes moving in the distance. Elias noticed them immediately more creatures, smaller than the ones before, but quick and curious. Lyra stiffened. They are dangerous. Not always, Elias said calmly. He knelt and pulled a small device from his belt. It emitted a soft hum and projected a circular field around them. The creatures hesitated, unsure of the strange, glowing barrier. Elias smiled. See? Sometimes understanding and preparation are better than fighting. Lyra watched him with wide eyes. He moved with patience, thought, and precision. She realized that human strength was not in weapons or muscles, it was in their mind, their ability to think and adapt. You are different, she said softly. I do not understand fully. You will, Elias said gently. It takes time to understand. That is true for humans too. They walked for hours, talking slowly through simple words and gestures. Lyra showed Elias plants that glowed in different colors, explaining their use, some for food, some for light, some for medicine. Elias listened carefully, asking questions and taking careful notes. His curiosity was genuine. He did not interrupt or dismiss her explanations. For the first time, Lyra felt respected. Humans usually acted as though their knowledge was superior, but Elias listened as if her knowledge mattered. They reached a small stream where the water shimmered with a silver hue. Lyra knelt, cupping her hands to drink. Elias followed, but he first observed the water, ensuring it was safe. Then he drank, smiling at its crisp, clean taste. "You are careful," Lyra said. "Always," Elias replied. "Carefulness keeps life safe. It is not weakness. It is strength." Lyra considered this. She had always thought strength was about speed, power, and weapons. But now she was beginning to see another one that required patience, intelligence, and understanding. As they rested by the stream, a sudden movement caught their attention. A small alien creature, no bigger than Lyra's hand, emerged from the underbrush. It was curious but cautious. Lyra instinctively reached for her weapon, but then paused. Glancing at Elias, he smiled and crouched slowly, opening his hand. The creature hesitated, then stepped closer and sniffed his fingers. Lyra watched, amazed. They trust you," she whispered. Elias nodded. "Trust is earned, not demanded. Even in dangerous worlds, kindness and patience can matter more than fear or force." Lyra lowered her weapon fully, letting it rest on her back. For the first time, she felt safe without holding a weapon. Her curiosity about humans grew stronger. Humans," she began, her words slow. "You are very different." "Different can be good," Elias said, smiling. "It can mean we have more ways to survive, more ways to help each other. Even you and I, we are different, but we can work together." Lyra's eyes softened, and she nodded. "Perhaps yes. We can try?" They continued walking, sharing simple stories. Lyra told him about the mountains near her village, the glowing crystals, the training her people underwent to survive. Elias told her about Earth, about human cities, their ways of exploring, and the desire to understand life beyond their planet. The conversation bridged worlds. Words were simple, but the meaning was clear. Respect, curiosity, and trust could cross species, cultures, and experiences. As night fell, the glowing plants lit their path, and fireflies, if they could be called, that danced around them. They came across a small clearing. Elias suggested they rest there for the night. Lyra hesitated, looking at the open space, but Elias gestured with a reassuring smile. "It is safe. We have learned together, and we can stay alert together," Lyra agreed. She lowered herself to the ground, watching him as he set up a simple energy shield for protection. Neither of them spoke much. The forest made its own sounds, rustling leaves, distant animal calls, the hum of energy in the rocks. Elias noticed her gaze and spoke softly. "Lyra, I know your people taught you to fight, to survive. That is important. But surviving does not always mean fighting. Sometimes it means thinking, planning, understanding." Lyra's eyes reflected the soft glow of the plants. "I see now. Perhaps humans can teach me another way. Perhaps you can teach me yours," Elias said. "We can learn from each other." A soft wind swept through the clearing, carrying the faint scent of minerals and the hum of the forest. Lyra felt something unfamiliar: hope, trust, curiosity. She realized that this human, unlike any she had seen before, was not an enemy, and perhaps never would be. Elias looked at her and smiled, a quiet, reassuring expression. "Tomorrow, we explore together. You show me your forest, and I show you how humans see the world." Lyra nodded, feeling a strange excitement she had never experienced before. She curled slightly under the faint light, feeling safe without holding her weapon. It was a small victory, but significant, as the night deepened. They watched the glowing canopy above them, to beings from different worlds, learning to trust, to understand, and to cooperate. In a universe that often demanded violence first, they were discovering something new, that intelligence, empathy, and courage could be far stronger than any weapon. For the first time, Lyra felt that humans, at least this human, might not be the threat she had expected. And Elias realized that the galaxy was full of allies waiting to be discovered, if only one approached with patience, understanding, and respect. The night passed quietly, full of soft whispers of the forest and the promise of a new alliance. The adventure had only just begun, but already trust had been built. The first light of dawn spilled through the glowing canopy, painting the forest floor with streaks of pale green and gold. Elias and Lyra had spent the night by the small clearing, and for the first time, the alien girl felt a sense of safety without a weapon in her hands. But that calm did not last. As they began walking deeper into the forest, a soft rustling echoed through the trees. Ilias's senses sharpened instantly, and he signaled Lyra to pause. The glow of her eyes sharpened as she scanned the shadows. "They are coming," she whispered, her voice tense. The translator displayed the words slowly, but the meaning was clear: predators larger, stronger, and far more dangerous than the small creatures they had encountered before were moving toward them. Elias crouched slightly, scanning the forest floor. "How many?" he asked quietly. Lyra's hand twitched near her back. "3, maybe more. They hunt in packs. They are fast and clever." Elias nodded, keeping calm. Panic would only make things worse. "Stay close to me," he said. "We will handle this together." The forest seemed to hold its breath as the creatures approached. Elias studied their movement carefully. They were unlike any animals he had encountered before, sleek, with jagged scales that reflected the glowing leaves, sharp claws that clicked softly against the rocks. Their eyes were bright, intelligent, and focused entirely on the two of them. Lyra's hand shook slightly, but she did not raise her weapon. Elias noticed and gave her a reassuring smile. "You do not need to fight them," he said. "We will use our minds." The first predator leaped from the shadows, its claws extended. Elias reacted instantly, grabbing a large branch and swinging it to trip the creature. It stumbled, hissing loudly, but did not fall entirely. The second predator advanced, and Elias ducked behind a rock, pulling Lyra with him. He whispered quickly, pointing to the uneven ground. "We can use the terrain. Lead them here, they will stumble." Lyra nodded, her fear giving way to focus. She mirrored his movements, guiding the creatures along paths where their long legs would falter on the rocks and roots. The creatures growled and hissed, frustrated by the humans' clever maneuvers. Elias noticed a small incline near a cluster of glowing plants. He gestured to Lyra. "Here, we can trap them without harming them." Together they moved silently, staying just ahead of the predators. Elias used his gravity pulse device sparingly, creating small barriers that redirected the creatures' paths. Lyra's eyes widened as she watched him. You do not kill them?" she whispered. "Not if we can avoid it," Elias replied calmly. "Strength is intelligence, courage is planning, and mercy is strategy." They reached the incline. Elias pointed to a small pit partially hidden by rocks and glowing foliage. "Lead them here," he instructed. "It will slow them down." Lyra moved carefully, her instincts guiding the creatures toward the pit. One of the predators stumbled into it, struggling but unharmed. Another lunged forward but misjudged the slope, sliding down the incline with a loud crash. The last predator hesitated, uncertain, and Elias used a gentle gravity pulse to guide it toward an escape path away from them. Lyra exhaled, her hands relaxing. They are gone?" she asked, her voice filled with amazement. "They are," Elias said with a faint smile. "See, you do not need to fight. You need to think, move carefully, and work together." She looked at him, her glowing eyes wide. You are not like any human I have seen you." "Protect without harming." Leah shrugged slightly, brushing a speck of dust from his uniform. "That is what we try to do. Sometimes it works, sometimes it does not. But I always try." The adrenaline faded, replaced by quiet awe. Lyra lowered herself to the ground, her weapon still holstered. For the first time in her life, she felt that there could be another way to survive, one that did not rely solely on speed. Strength or weapons? Elias glanced at her and nodded. We should rest for a while. The forest is unpredictable, and we need to stay alert. They found a small clearing where the glowing leaves formed a natural canopy, casting a soft light that made the shadows less threatening. As they rested, Lyra began asking questions, her curiosity overpowering her caution. Why? Why do humans not rely on weapons? She asked. Elias considered the question carefully. Because we have something stronger. Intelligence, creativity, and understanding. Weapons can protect, yes, but they do not solve problems. Thinking does. Lyra's eyes softened. I never thought. Thinking could be stronger than claws or fire. Strength comes in many forms, Elias said. Courage, patience, cleverness, and even mercy. These are weapons too. She was quiet for a moment, reflecting on his words. Then she looked around at the forest, her gaze thoughtful. My people. We train for strength. We are taught to fight, but maybe there is another way. Elias smiled. There is always another way. That is what makes humans human. And it seems you can learn it too. The forest seemed calm now, but Elias knew better. He had learned from experience that danger could appear at any moment. He kept a careful watch while Lyra explored the area, examining the glowing plants and unusual stones. After a while, she returned, her expression curious. You understand? Everything quickly, she said. How? How do you know what to do? Observation, analysis, and patience, Elias explained. I look, I think, I act. Sometimes it is instinct, sometimes careful planning. But I never act without understanding. Lyra nodded slowly. My people. They act quickly. They trust strength first. But maybe strength is not only in speed or claws, perhaps. It is in mind too. Leah's smile widened. Exactly. That is what humans have learned over time. And it is why we can face danger without always needing weapons. They continued walking, moving cautiously through the forest. Elias showed Lyra how to observe the environment carefully, noting patterns in animal movement, plant growth, and terrain. Lyra began to see things differently, noticing details she had never paid attention to before. You see everything, she said softly. I try, Elias replied. That is how humans survive on unfamiliar worlds. We observe, we learn, we adapt. That is our strength. As the sun rose higher, the forest began to brighten. Birds with glowing feathers flitted through the trees, and small creatures peeked curiously from behind rocks. Elias and Lyra moved carefully, keeping a respectful distance from the wildlife. Then, in the distance, they saw movement larger figures emerging from the forest. Elias crouched immediately, signaling Lyra to do the same. More predators, she whispered. Elias shook his head. Not predators. Something else. As they watched, they realized the figures were not animals, but intelligent alien hunters larger, more organized and clearly armed with advanced tools. They had entered the forest with a single purpose, capture or confrontation. Lyra's hand twitched toward her weapon. But Elias held up his palm. Not yet, he whispered. We can handle this with strategy. He studied their approach carefully. There were 5 of them, moving in a coordinated pattern. Elias noted the gaps between them, the shadows they used, and the timing of their steps. He formulated a plan quickly. Follow my lead, he said softly to Lyra. We do not fight. We think. We adapt. Lyra hesitated, then nodded. She lowered her weapon and moved beside him. Trusting his judgment completely, Elias guided her through a series of clever maneuvers using rocks to trip the hunters. Shadows to hide their movements and branches to create barriers. The hunters were intelligent, but Elias was faster in thought. He anticipated their moves, redirecting them away from the human's path. Lyra watched in amazement. This human, fragile in appearance, unarmed, was outthinking beings trained for combat. You. How? She whispered, almost in disbelief. Elias smiled faintly. Thinking is stronger than any weapon, Lyra. Courage, intelligence, Patience, they can protect more than claws, teeth, or lasers. By the time the hunters realized they were being outmaneuvered, Elias and Lyra had led them into a natural canyon where their tools and weapons were useless against the terrain. Elias used a final gravity pulse to close the path temporarily, giving them a safe escape. The hunters hissed and struggled but could not follow. Elias and Lyra emerged on the other side, unscathed and unharmed. Lyra exhaled deeply, lowering her hands completely. "You saved us without hurting them," Elias nodded. "That is what I do. Survival does not always require harm. Intelligence, strategy, and patience, these are my weapons." For the first time, Lyra felt a deep respect for humans. She realized that the strength Elias showed was not just in fighting, it was in thinking, planning, and acting with care. The forest seemed calm again. But both of them knew that danger was never far away. Yet they had faced it together and survived. As they walked onward, Lyra glanced at Elias, her expression thoughtful. I want to learn. Teach me your ways." Elias smiled gently. "I will, and I will learn yours too. Together, we can face what comes next." The day continued with cautious exploration, but the bond between human and alien had strengthened. Elias had shown Lyra that survival was not about fear, weapons, or aggression. It was about intelligence, courage, and trust. And Lyra had shown him that even in a world built on strength and instinct, there was room for learning, understanding, and cooperation. The forest whispered around them, alive with unseen eyes and distant sounds. But Elias and Lyra walked forward side by side, ready to face whatever challenges awaited them together. The glow of the forest shifted as the day wore on, painting the ground with soft shades of green and gold. Elias and Lyra moved slowly, their senses alert to every sound. The events of the previous day had left an impression on both of them. The creatures and hunters they had faced were dangerous, yet they had survived without resorting to violence. That experience had created a bond, but trust still needed time to grow. Elias glanced at Lyra, noticing the way her eyes darted to every shadow, even though she no longer clutched her weapon. "You're doing well," he said softly. "The forest is unpredictable, but you're learning to read it differently." Lyra's lips curved slightly. "I am trying. You see things I do not notice." "That's because humans notice patterns," Elias explained. "We observe, remember, and plan. It helps us survive. And help others survive too." Lyra considered this, her glowing eyes following a flutter of leaves overhead. "My people, we rely on speed, strength, and instincts. We train for combat, for survival, but you survive without weapons. It puzzles me." Elias smiled faintly. "Intelligence can be stronger than claws or lasers. Courage, patience, and understanding. These are also forms of strength." They continued walking, and Elias asked her questions about her life and village. Lyra spoke of the mountains near her home, where crystal formations gleamed in the sunlight. She told him about the training her people underwent to survive the dangerous forest. It's the lessons they learned about predators and the value of speed and strength. "I never thought of patience," she said softly. We act quickly, but perhaps there is more than one way to survive." Elias nodded. "Exactly. Strength is not just speed or muscle. It is also thinking, planning, and understanding. And sometimes, it is knowing when not to fight." Lyra's gaze softened. "Perhaps humans can teach me something new. And perhaps you can teach me too," Elias said. "There is always something to learn, no matter the world." The forest opened into a wide clearing. In the center, a small stream trickled over smooth rocks. Glowing flowers lined its banks, and the sunlight made the water shimmer like silver. Elias gestured for Lyra to sit beside him, and she did, still observing him carefully. "Let me show you something," Elias said. He knelt by the water and picked up a smooth stone. Holding it in his hand, he studied the patterns in its surface. "Everything has a pattern," he said. "Even danger. Even life. If you learn to see it, you can predict, plan, and act wisely. Lyra tilted her head, watching him closely. Predict, plan, act wisely. Yes, Elias said. It is how humans survive in unknown places. And it is how we solve problems without unnecessary harm. She watched as he placed the stone on a flat surface and used a stick to trace the paths of nearby creatures. Elias explained how each movement, each sound, and each shadow could provide information. Lyra listened intently, her curiosity growing. You see the world differently, she whispered. I want to see like that. Elias smiled. You can. It takes patience and practice, but anyone can learn to notice patterns and understand them. Lyra spent the next hour watching Elias, imitating his observations. She pointed out subtle movements in the plants, the small creatures scurrying among the rocks, and the way light and shadow shifted across the terrain. Slowly, she began to see the forest in a new way, not just as a place to survive, but as a network of patterns and possibilities. You are teaching me, she said softly. Not with weapons, but with thought. Yes, Elias replied. Thought can be stronger than any weapon, and learning together makes both of us stronger. As they practiced, a new sound echoed through the forest. Lyra froze. Elias put a hand on her shoulder. Stay calm. Let's observe first. From the shadows emerged a group of small creatures, curious but cautious. Elias studied their movements and whispered instructions to Lyra. Together, they guided the creatures away from danger without harming them. Lyra's eyes widened in amazement. You saved them. Without fighting, Elias nodded. That is how humans often survive. Observation, understanding, and careful action. Lyra's respect for him grew with every passing moment. She realized that this human had a strength her people had never taught her, one that did not rely on speed, claws, or weapons, but on mind, patience, and courage. After the creatures left, they continued walking toward a hill that Lyra recognized from a distance. We can rest there, she said. It overlooks the forest. My people sometimes meditate there, Elias nodded. Good idea. Let's go. The climb was steady, but not difficult. Elias observed the terrain carefully, pointing out safe paths and small footholds. Lyra followed, noticing the way he moved, efficient, calm, and precise. At the top, they reached a flat area surrounded by crystal formations that reflected the sunlight in brilliant colors. This is beautiful, Elias said softly. Lyra smiled faintly. It is peaceful here. My people. Come to think, to meditate, to rest. Elias sat on a flat crystal surface, motioning for Lyra to join him. Then let's rest and talk. For hours, they shared stories. Lyra spoke of her family, her village, and the lessons her people had learned about survival. Elias told her about humans, their history, and the ways they explored planets and learned about other life forms. They laughed over differences, marveled over similarities, and slowly built a sense of understanding. Humans are curious, Lyra said. Not just about danger, but about life itself, Elias said. Curiosity is what drives us. It helps us survive, helps us learn, helps us connect with others. Lyra considered this. Perhaps curiosity is strength too. Yes, Elias agreed. It is. And courage, patience, and kindness are strength as well. Strength is not only in muscles or weapons, it is in mind and heart. The sun dipped lower, painting the forest in warm colors. Lyra looked out over the glowing trees, feeling a sense of calm she had never experienced before. Elias's presence, calm and confident, made the dangers of the forest feel less threatening. She realized she trusted him completely. I trust you, she said softly. More than anyone. Ever, Elias smiled gently. And I trust you too, Lyra. That is why we can learn together. We protect each other not because of weapons, but because we care. Oh? A soft wind rustled through the crystal formations, carrying the faint hum of the forest. Lyra felt a strange warmth in her chest. She had expected fear, danger, and conflict with humans. Instead, she found understanding, intelligence, and respect. You are different, she said. Different can be good, Elias replied. It means we have choices. It means we can learn, grow, and face challenges together. Lyra nodded slowly. I want to learn more. Not just survival, but understanding. With you. Elias reached out and touched her hand gently. And I want to learn from you. Your world, your people, your way of seeing life. Together, we can face anything. The two of them sat quietly, watching the glowing forest below. The bond between them had grown stronger, built on trust, patience, and curiosity. For the first time, Lyra understood that humans could be powerful without weapons, that courage and intelligence could protect life, and that trust was stronger than fear. As night fell, they prepared to descend from the hill. Elias checked the surrounding terrain, pointing out safe paths and noting potential dangers. Lyra followed carefully, her confidence growing with every step. You teach me? To see differently, she said softly. And you teach me too, Elias replied. About your world, your people, and the strength of curiosity and courage. The forest seemed quieter now, as if it recognized the new alliance. Creatures observed from a distance, no longer threatening. The air felt lighter, filled with the promise of understanding and cooperation. Elias and Lyra reached the base of the hill, tired but content. They had survived another day, learned from each other, and strengthened their bond. The forest still held dangers, but together they felt capable of facing whatever came next. We can face anything together? Lyra asked. Yes, Elias said firmly. As long as we trust, observe, and think carefully, we can face anything. Lyra smiled, feeling a sense of hope and confidence she had never known. She had learned that humans could inspire courage and respect without violence. She had learned that strength could come from patience, intelligence, and understanding. And she had learned that this human Elias was someone she could rely on. The night settled over the forest, the glowing leaves casting gentle light across their path. Elias and Lyra walked side by side, ready to continue their journey together, knowing that trust, cooperation, and curiosity were the greatest strengths they could possess. The forest had grown quiet under the twin moon's glow, and a gentle breeze rustled through the glowing leaves. Elias and Lyra moved carefully along the forest path, their steps synchronized in a rhythm born of mutual trust. They had spent days learning from each other, understanding the subtle signs of the forest, the patterns of its creatures, and the strengths that each brought to the partnership. You have taught me much, Lyra said softly, glancing at Elias. I see the forest differently now. I understand better, Elias smiled. And I have learned from you. Your instincts, your knowledge of this world, they are remarkable. Together, we are stronger. They rounded a bend and came to a wide river, its waters flowing swiftly over polished stones. On the far bank, something moved, a group of creatures, larger and faster than any they had faced before, was approaching. Their eyes glowed with intelligence, and they carried weapons of some kind, shimmering in the moonlight. Lyra froze. Hunters. Many. More than before. They will fight. Elias crouched slightly, scanning the terrain. We don't fight unless we must, he said. We will use our minds. Stay close. The creatures began to advance, moving with coordinated steps and careful precision. Elias studied their movements, noting the distance, timing, and shadows. They are smart, he whispered to Lyra. We need a plan. Follow me and observe carefully. Lyra nodded, placing her trust fully in Elias. She followed his lead as he moved silently along the riverbank, analyzing every step the approaching hunters took. They will try to surround us, he said. We can't let them do that. Watch for gaps in their formation. Lyra focused intently, noticing patterns she had never seen before. She pointed out a weak spot in the hunter's approach. Elias smiled. Exactly. That is our chance. He picked up a small rock and tossed it lightly toward a cluster of glowing plants. The sound drew the hunters' attention, and they shifted slightly, adjusting their positions. Elias used the brief distraction to guide Lyra along a hidden path that would give them a better vantage point. "You are clever," Lyra whispered. "We are clever together," Elias said. "Watch, learn, and act carefully." They reached a high ridge overlooking the river. From this vantage point, they could see the hunters more clearly. Elias noticed that the creatures relied heavily on coordination and reaction, but they were not creative. That was their advantage. "We will not fight," he explained. "We will guide them. Use their habits against them." Lyra tilted her head. "Guide them. Against themselves?" "Yes," Elias said. "Watch, and you will understand." He motioned for her to observe the hunters closely. "See how they move in pairs? They trust each other but follow patterns. We can use this. If we disrupt the patterns, we can control their movement without harming them." Lyra nodded, her mind working quickly to understand his strategy. She began to see the logic in Elias's words. She could anticipate the hunter's movements and follow his lead. "Now," Elias whispered, "act." They moved carefully along the ridge, using small disturbances to redirect the hunters. A glowing leaf fell in the path of one pair, causing them to stumble. Another hunter reacted to a shadow shift, moving away from the others. Slowly, the hunters became confused, unsure of the environment. They tried to regroup, but Elias had anticipated their every move. Lyra watched in awe. This human, unarmed, was controlling the situation with intelligence, patience, and understanding. She realized that true strength was not always in weapons or speed. It was in thought, coordination, and trust. The hunters eventually stopped, their glowing eyes scanning the forest in frustration. Elias gave a small nod to Lyra. Together, they moved toward the hunter's flank. Creating the illusion of greater numbers and movement, the hunters, overwhelmed and uncertain, retreated slowly. Disappearing into the trees, Lyra exhaled deeply, her shoulders relaxing. "You saved us." Again, without fighting, Leah smiled gently. "Sometimes the best way to win is without a battle. Observation, intelligence, and patience, they are stronger than weapons alone."
Iris?
Glowing eyes softened. I understand now. Humans have strength, different from mine. And together, we are stronger, yes, Elias said. Together, we can face anything. They moved back along the riverbank, their steps slow and careful. The forest was quiet again, but both were alert. They had learned that danger could come in many forms, but trust and cooperation could overcome it. "You. I never thought," Lyra said, her voice quiet. "I thought humans were only fragile, only weak. But you are not. You inspire trust, not fear." Elias smiled. "Strength is not only in fighting, it is in courage, patience, and understanding. That is how humans survive, by thinking, learning, and adapting." Lyra glanced at him, her expression thoughtful. "I want to learn more. About humans, about thinking, about courage. And I want to learn more about you," Elias said. "Your instincts, your knowledge of this forest, your people's way of life. We can learn from each other." They walked in silence for a while, side by side. The forest seemed calmer now, as if it recognized the alliance between human and alien. Creatures peeked from behind trees, curious but no longer threatening. The air was filled with the soft glow of leaves and the hum of the forest, creating a sense of harmony. As they reached a small hill, Elias paused. "From here we can see the village you mentioned," he said. "It is time to meet your people." Lyra hesitated. They will not understand. They fear humans. They may attack." "Then we show them another way," Elias said firmly. "Not with weapons, with understanding, patience, and trust. That is stronger than fear." Lyra nodded slowly. I will try." With you. They climbed the hill, and from the top. The village appeared a cluster of crystalline structures nestled among glowing trees. Lyra's eyes softened with familiarity. Home. Finally, she whispered. Elias observed quietly, noting the terrain, possible threats, and paths for safe approach. We move carefully, he instructed. Observe first, act second. Patience and caution. They approached the village slowly. As they neared, Lyra signaled to the others, explaining that Elias was a friend. A few villagers emerged cautiously, their eyes glowing in the dim light. Weapons were raised at first, but Lyra stepped forward, raising her hands in trust. He comes in peace, she said softly. Elias mirrored her gesture. I come to learn, not harm. I seek understanding. The villagers hesitated, then slowly lowered their weapons, observing him carefully. They had expected a threat but found none. Instead, they saw someone calm, confident, and respectful. Lyra guided Elias into the village. She explained his actions, how he had survived the forest, and how he had helped her understand new ways of thinking. The villagers listened, their eyes wide with curiosity. He is clever, one elder said. He did not fight, yet survived. He understands. Elias nodded respectfully. I respect your ways and your strength. We can learn from each other. That is how we survive, by understanding, not by fear, the villagers murmured among themselves. Slowly, trust began to build. Lyra's guidance and Elias's actions spoke louder than words. A bridge between worlds had been formed. As night fell over the village, the glowing trees illuminated the path. Elias and Lyra sat together, watching the lights shimmer across the crystals. You, humans, are remarkable, Lyra said softly. I will tell my people your way, thought, patience, courage. Stronger than fear, Elias smiled. In your ways, your instincts, your knowledge are remarkable too. Together, we can face anything. Lyra reached out, touching his hand gently. Together, yes, we can survive and thrive. The forest whispered around them, filled with unseen life and distant sounds. Yet Elias and Lyra felt safe, knowing they had each other. Trust, intelligence, and courage had overcome fear, danger, and misunderstanding in the quiet of the glowing village under the twin moon's light. The first true alliance between human and alien was formed. And in that moment, Elias understood something important. Strength is not in weapons alone, but in mind, heart, and trust. Lyra understood, too, that humans could inspire, protect, and guide without violence. And together, they had proven that cooperation. Understanding and courage were stronger than any fear. The adventure had reached a new chapter. One where human and alien stood side by side, ready to face the unknown. The forest around them hummed softly, the promise of challenges yet to come, but neither of them feared it. They had each other, and that was more powerful than any weapon. And in that quiet, glowing night, a bond had been forged that would change both worlds forever.